All right, welcome everyone. This is Revenue Roadmap, where we talk about driving revenue and increasing profits in local businesses. I'm Anthony Karls, and today we are joined again with Miss Lisa Filip. So thank you for being here with us today. We're going to talk a little bit more about content marketing. Today we're going to talk about the formula, how we think about it here at Rocket Clicks, what that formula looks like, mistakes that typically get made, things of that nature. Before we jump into that, Lisa, let's put you on the spot here.
Oh no.
Tell me, if you were to recommend one book for someone in your role, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say Crucial Conversations. That's one that I read actually before I was in this role, but I feel like it's helped me immensely in this role and every role outside of work, like personal life, all the things. I like to hear myself talk, so I think I'm a good communicator, but yeah, that book taught me a lot. So I would highly, highly recommend that to anybody who's in like a people leadership role or just who wants to learn how to communicate with their loved ones. It's a fantastic book.
Nice. What was your big takeaway from Crucial Conversations?
Ooh, I would say like the framing of a conversation, like when you want to bring up how you experienced something and being really intentional about how you frame that to the other person to ensure that they hear your statement in its truest form and they don't basically apply their own, kind of biases against it of, you ever say like, oh, hey, why didn't you take out the trash or something like that, right? And your partner is like, you never trust me, and like it just blows out of proportion. You're like, oh my gosh, this is going so badly. So like being really intentional, just like how you use your words, and make sure that people hear your true intention when you're giving them feedback or things like that. That was probably my biggest takeaway from that book.
Yeah,
So.
super valuable in the people
Yes,
role, and
definitely.
definitely can help you avoid a couple arguments you may or may not have with
Right.
your closest loved one that you're living with. So
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
Yeah, I love that book. That's a great book.
Mhm.
And it's something that we do with our team
Mhm.
in some of our book studies. So, all right. Topic of the day. Back to content marketing. Last time we talked about what is content marketing overall. So today, I want you to break that down for us a little bit more. Uh, so we talked super high level. Let's talk about the formula for content marketing. How do we think about it? What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So last time I think we talked about more of the front half of the formula, right? So it all starts with really great content. When you create really great content, you're creating value for the people that are consuming that content. And then when that value lives out there in the ether, it creates an audience of people, right, who are consuming that. So I think we spent most of our time kind of talking about that first half. But what happens when you have that audience, what you do with that audience and their attention that you've created is really, kind of the rest of that formula. So, you have an opportunity to advertise to that audience once it's created and they're engaged. And really, a lot of times, what that looks like is just building awareness of your brand, of your company, of kind of whatever you're trying to put in front of them. So you drive that awareness, and then down the line, that creates the potential for future sales, right? So it's really that start of good content all the way to sales, but there's a lot of intermediary steps and mistakes that businesses sometimes make along the way. So
Yeah. So creating good, valuable content gives you the opportunity to build an audience. That audience gives you an opportunity to create a piece of awareness
mhm.
in an area, and then that awareness gives you an opportunity to sell something potentially in the future. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Um, but we see a lot of mistakes made here. So let's talk about some of those. So
Yes.
what are some mistakes that we see in this space?
Yes, yeah, it's very simple, straightforward, but it does have a few steps, and you do have to go through all of those steps for it to be successful. So definitely see business owners try to skip some of those steps, find a shortcut, a way around. It unfortunately never works out quite as well as they hope it will. What that looks like a lot of times is maybe they create a really great piece of content, they're really excited about it. and they create that value and that audience. But instead of kind of going through the awareness driving stage, they just immediately try to sell to that audience. And the audience feels that. It's often like this content and the value you're providing now feels, not as altruistic, that it's now all of a sudden just like kind of a sales gimmick of like, oh, you were just dangling a carrot so you could get my information, so you could just sell me something, right? And it kind of deteriorates that value that you were trying to create. So I would say that that's a big mistake, is people kind of trying to skip around and jump the system, if you will, a little bit. So
Yeah, I know one thing that I think it's Alex Hermosi, when he talks in his podcast, he talks a lot about like waiting as long as you can before you can make an ask.
mm-hmm.
Something to think about in this space.
Yep.
If you're writing a really good piece of content, you're writing a good article, like maybe at the end, don't try to pitch. And if you need something, buy from us right now.
Right.
Like they're probably already on your website. They're getting some brand recognition. Like create the awareness, create the trust. If you're understanding your metrics and understand how to like drive awareness using your content, I talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to get them into your funnel. Don't ruin the trust that you started to build.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about that. So we're talking about building. You identified some mistakes. We moved way too fast through that process. What about creating good content is not good enough? Like, why is just good content not good enough? And why can like creating good content still fail if you're not following the formula?
For sure. Yeah. And I'll say not all content is created equal. So some people think, oh, content's content, whatever, we'll just blow something out there and it'll work for us. And that breaks the whole chain that we kind of talked about, right? So if you start with bad content, you're not going to create any value. If you don't create any value, you have no audience. If you have no audience, you have no one to advertise to. No one's there to listen. No one's there to learn about your business and what you do and the problems you solve. So you have to start with good content. So I'll say that's definitely another mistake that some businesses think is, isn't all content built the same? It's like, definitely not. So what makes good content actually good, right? And is just putting good content out there good enough? And the answer to that is, no, good content isn't enough inherently as it is. It's very much table stakes for a business to be successful and to grow and build their awareness in their community.
So what is good content? What does good content look like? I know there's three different types. Like what do those look like? And what are generally the big buckets?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you have this piece of content and you're like, I don't know if this is good or not. Right. So it's all about making sure that it creates value, and what value looks like to an individual is it usually falls in one of three buckets. It's usually educational in some way. It's usually entertainment in some way, or inspirational in some way. So those three buckets, if you kind of look at a piece of content and, give it to your audience and see, it's, they're probably going to react in one of those three ways and find value utilizing one of those three buckets. So that's a good way to know if you've got good content and you're creating value for your audience.
Yeah, I know. Like, so one way to think about this, if you're a small business, like specifically a family law firm that we built, is we have a lot of content on that site, tailored around just general awareness of information on like what different, very specific topics, what they look like. And in the state of Wisconsin and in the state of Illinois, because they're two different sets of laws, what we try to do very intentionally is like, we just gave you the information. Like, obviously we have a global conversion funnel on our site, but like in the article, we are not really trying to push you to buy something.
Yep.
We are cooking you. We are making sure our pixels are on you, and where we have opportunities, resources, and all of that. Like we're also trying to grab information. But when we put out a piece of content for that, like what happens with the marital residence is an example. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to pitch you on a lead on that page. Like there's a form on that page. It's at the bottom. It's the global footer. But I'm not trying to, in the article, pitch you on that. That makes sense. It's kind of what you're talking about a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like build the trust that it can build.
Yeah. Yeah, because then they experienced that, right? And they thought, wow, that was a really helpful article, and I learned something. And I think we talked about last time how long that cycle is, right?
Yeah.
From somebody going through kind of the 5 stages of awareness, from unaware all the way to being ready to take the action, right? Whether it's buying a product or signing up for a service.
Yeah.
And if you can insert yourself along the way just through that supportive, helpful, educational content in the way that you're saying, or entertainment, you teach something to somebody and they feel inspired by your brand, they're going to more than likely seek you out on their own when they're ready to make that decision and take that action, because they've already engaged with you a few times and they said, they have the sensation of, wow, this brand was really knowledgeable about what I'm going through, for a divorce per se. They really supported me and gave me the information, right? It was free, it was available. They didn't try to get me to do anything. And now I'm ready to decide who I'm going to trust to actually walk me through this legal process. I feel like I can trust these people, so I'm going to reach out to them and have a conversation. So yeah, it's that slow burn. Then when they come in your door, they're already a believer in your business. So that in and of itself, helps with close rates and things like that too. So
Yeah. So you said, so there's three. So if you're building a piece of content, generally they're going to fall in three buckets: educational. Would you say educational?
educational, entertainment, inspirational.
There you go.
Those
That's
three. Yep.
had an I word in there, and I'm like, I don't know what that I word was. Um, maybe I'm just getting old. I could be getting old. That's okay.
That's okay. You want to say educational and
You guys all help me. I'm the old fart here at Rocket Flex. Okay, uh, so talk a little bit more about why good content isn't good enough. Like, what else makes
yeah,
it good enough?
definitely. Yeah. So you create a great piece of content, right? You create that value. And if you just kind of kick it out there, if you don't advertise, you don't build awareness. So there's actually that inherent and potential future value to your business isn't created,
Mhm.
because you're not doing anything with it, or if you're not being intentional about where you're sharing it, and how you're sharing it, the right people aren't going to see it, and so as much value as could be created doesn't get created because you're not thinking intentionally about where are these people who are searching for divorce information, or where is my potential customer just existing out in on the internet, in the world, and how do I make sure that they can find this content and have it be helpful to them when they need it. So that's the part where good content isn't good enough, is if you don't put kind of like an intentional distribution system, if we call it that way, kind of behind the content to make sure it actually gets in front of the right people. So
Awesome. Very good. What else? Any other thoughts here? Any other closing thoughts on how businesses should think about implementing content using this formula? Formula again: value equals audience, valuable content equals an audience equals awareness, awareness equals opportunities to sell.
mhm.
So, any other words of advice here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say holistically, it's, I think I used the term slow burn before. Especially if other businesses have really engaged in more traditional advertising up to this point, they haven't dabbled intentionally in content marketing. It can feel really slow, like a lot is going in from an investment, a time management standpoint, to building this content and getting it out there and not seeing much back from a like dollars and cents standpoint. And that's just not how really good content marketing works. It's a lot of intentionality behind putting effort in, and then like we talked about, kind of putting it in front of the right people, letting them work their way through their process, building that trust with the business, and then they will come back to you. So making sure you don't kind of cut the effort out at the knees because you put some time and effort in and didn't immediately see a bunch of oh, my revenue didn't increase by 20%, I guess it's not working.
Yeah,
To not look at it that way, because it's definitely in for the long game, and it'll do a lot to just drive the awareness of your business and the value and trust that you create with your
yeah, that's
potential
such a good point.
customers.
The I think that's one of the best points in this space. Honestly, I've had the opportunity to work more closely with Grant Cardone in some of his seminars and learn what his path looked like and do things there. He spent about 5 years developing content, and he saw little increases in his business, but his business did not take off until about year 5. And they have, if you go to their marketing workshop, they talk very specifically about what that path looked like for them and how long it took, and like, here's when we started and here's what happened. And then all of a sudden, about 5 years into that process, it's just like hockey stick, because
Yep.
he had traction, he had lots of people engaged, he understood more about his audience, how to engage them, how to leverage them, and his business like really ramped and exploded at that point. Like,
Yep.
they, on their graph, they went from uh, it was around like 12 to 17 million in a short period of time. 5 years, they went to over 100 million,
Yep.
just by like, what did they do with continual plotting of content and how to leverage it and how to use it in their business, and just stick with it. It's a hard, long, slow burn, but it's really worth it once you hit it.
Yeah, yeah, it is a core foundational piece of the business. You'll hit a ceiling and you'll feel like you can't grow anymore, but it's things like content marketing that, to your point, won't feel like anything and will actually bust you through multiple revenue barriers for your business and suddenly have you growing significantly more than you thought was possible. So,
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your time today.
yeah, that was
Look
fun.
forward to,
Thanks.
look forward to our next combo.
Definitely. Thanks.